Hi everyone. We got about 50 minutes, so we're going to start and make it very dynamic, active, and Bubba wants to be controversial, so we'll have some controversial stuff. So I'm DeMiroz, co-founder, general partner of the Venture Reality Fund. We just launched it with Tipitat, my partner. Everyone knows Tipitat. So I don't want to get in trouble with the SEC. We're raising a $50 million fund, really working well with the early stage and late stage funds. And some of these guys are already our co-investors, and we got about 4 or 5 companies in the portfolio already. But it's not about me, it's about them and you. So I'm going to really sort of ask you guys to talk about your fund, your interests, and then we have some number of questions in terms of VC, investing environment, scaling business, go-to-market, trade-offs, and controversy by Bubba. Yeah. Jeff,
sure, I'll start.
Yeah.
So hi, I'm Jeff Wasson. I'm with Boost VC. We are a seed stage fund and accelerator focused on virtual reality. So we invest in early stage teams. We have a 90-day program in San Mateo, Bay Area. And we've got about 30 investments now in virtual reality companies. So we're excited about the space. 2016 and 2017 are shaping up to be good years, we hope. And if you're a startup company looking for a little amount of money, come see me after the show.
Hey everybody, my name's Bubba Murarka. I'm with DFJ. We've been in the business for about 30 years, and we focus on investing in crazy disruptive categories early. Some of our classic hits are Tesla, SpaceX. More recently also, before it was thought to be crazy, was the whole SaaS business model, and we did early things in Box and other big companies like that. So we are very excited about VR. Our journey started about 2 years ago, and we've invested in building our own content. We've met with, can't count how many number of teams at this point, gone up to hang out with the Valve guys at their studio, and also spent some time with the Microsoft team on HoloLens. So we're really excited to be here today. I'm personally very excited as I've only written code for 3 platforms in the last 10 years, and one was Facebook, the other was mobile, both iOS and Android, and the third has now been VR. So I'm hopeful third time's a charm, because those other 2 weren't that big.
So I'm Kobie, I'm with Accel Partners. We're a roughly 30-year-old firm, global platform, main offices in Palo Alto, but also have presence in London and India. Invest in both early stage and growth stage companies. Some companies we invested in first for companies like Facebook, Slack. I'm actually very personally interested in VR. We're as a firm been now sort of more toying and sort of dipping our toe in the water on the category, but prior to Accel as a personal investor in Oculus, been following the category very closely kind of for the last few years, and we have a couple of seed stage investments right now, so very excited to find the new creators of what's going to be a very interesting category here.
I'm Bob Berry, CEO of Envelop VR. I'm representing the other side of the table, the entrepreneur side. Having raised a seed round last year with prominent angels in the Seattle area, recently did our Series A with Madrone, Kleiner Perkins, and GV, formerly known as Google Ventures. We raised a $5.5 million Series A, and I'm just here to represent the entrepreneur perspective, and we're building enterprise VR.
Woohoo. Woohoo. All right. So I got 3 topics. One is talking about the investing environment, sort of what's going on. Obviously, the pace is picking up. The other part is, what do you tell your portfolio companies from VC perspective in terms of monetization, go-to-market, sort of trade-offs, and from Bob's perspective, how does it really evolve the business now? He's got a sizable chunk of money. And third part is, what about the sort of financing strategies from seed to later stage funding? So. Going back to the first one, if you look at the sort of latest numbers, depending upon who you look at, but last year, 2015 was about $700 million invested in VRAR companies, about more than 2x of, by the way, all of my numbers not including Magic Leap. So this is all Sun's Magic Leap stuff, right? It's really so it just changes all the numbers. But so 700 million last year, 300 and or so the year before, and sort of the pace really picked up, especially second half of last year. A lot of great VCs are coming in the market. And then on top of it, M&A volume was pretty sizable last year, about 311 million, which is half the total venture investment. In terms of relative percentages, that's pretty significant for an evolving marketplace. And then in terms of breakdown, it's about 45% content and games and video, about 15+% hardware stuff, HMDs. And then the rest is about services, infrastructure plays, and so forth, and from Leap to others. So given that sort of market dynamics, maybe starting with Bubba, who wants to be controversial. So how do you look at the market? I mean, you made investment. Well, actually, Bubba and I were co-investors in one great company, but beyond that, I just say great company. And so, Bubba, what's your perspective of the market?
Oh man, well, I think it's hard. I guess I'd walk it into the underlying question is macroeconomics. We've been on an 8-year tear in the public markets. The interest rates have been at zero, so everyone's chasing yield, which has led to non-traditional investors putting money to work in private technology startups. When's the party going to end, right? And these things are on a cycle. Lo and behold, the Fed raises the rates, a minuscule amount, but the first time they've done that in 8 years. The market is off to a terrible start for the first couple weeks of the year. Is it all over? Should we all pack up our cards and go home? And I think the reality is, as very early stage investors, like all of us are, and even as entrepreneurs, as Bob is, and I think he's probably done some angel investing in his day. We have to identify and bet on durable companies, both through good and bad markets, because innovation does not stop. Right, and so I think my kind of sense is, whether the pace that the macro with the numbers Marco provided slows down or not, I can't predict that, but I can guarantee you, every venture capitalist, kind of around the world, even if they're anxious about sources of follow-on capital, which is a huge concern, are still going to be putting money to work. It might take them a little longer to get the conviction. The terms might not be where they were a year or 2 years ago, but I think great companies can still get invested in and will get invested in. And so that's kind of the way I would look at it. That's not very controversial on this specific topic, but I'd love to hear what other folks have, and then I can follow on with a controversial question.
So how I look at it, in terms of just kind of deploying capital, where I spend my time, there's certain areas that I'd say are more sort of down the start of the fairway businesses, like SaaS businesses, or the on-demand economy, or whatever you want to call it. I think if you're investing in VR or you're trying to build a company in VR, probably most people right now still think you're crazy. There's very few kind of headsets that are still out there from a consumer perspective. So we're at not even inning one. The ball's barely even been sort of thrown out in the first pitch. So when you look at folks like us that are trying to sort of bet on the market, it is one where I think we're all very excited with regards to the exponential growth curve that we're going to enter into as it relates to this new medium, coming to the masses. And at least how I look at where we're deploying capital in VR, it's platforms that really help create the category. And if I'm going to deploy capital in the category, it's going after opportunities that are gigantic swings, and people probably think things I'm trying to do are still totally crazy. It'll never happen. But I think if you were to say VR is going to be a technology that we'd have a conference here about right now, 5 years ago, you'd probably say, say it was crazy. So that's how I look at sort of how the investment climate is kind of trending in VR. I think folks like us are just trying to make big bets, learn as we kind of go along, and help build the category, and and find interesting opportunities.
Kobie, since you recently invested in Emergent, which is sort of VR for everyone. Given the size of Accel, your fund, and then it was you, Google, and Rothenberg, and 2.2 million or so. What's your perspective? So is it like an experiment for you? Is it a full commitment, or the?
Yeah, no, I mean it's a full commitment. I spend anytime I deploy a check, I give my portfolio companies disproportionate sort of percentage of my time. And for Emergent, for me, I was so excited about what they're doing because they're trying to bring sort of UGC content creation to the masses, where you don't need sort of proprietary hardware like a 360 camera, but actually just what's in your pocket to capture and share and consume content. So for me, that's I'd be very upset if that thing were to go to zero. It's not an experiment for me. It's like that thing, by every sort of building my body, I'm going to try to help win. So I think when I look at it as an experiment, it's still in the grand scheme of things, who knows what happens with this category. But I think it's has as good a shot as any business right now. It's going after sort of an opportunity in VR.
Bob, you have a lot of experience as an entrepreneur raising money from PlayFab to other companies. So how was the environment for you when you first started, and where do you think it is now?
I would say I spent almost all of 2014 doing nothing but educating people on VR. I thought I was pitching, but I was actually just educating, and not just the people I was talking to, educating myself as well. And it's not surprising that there was a lot of trepidation around it because it's that tech that's been 10 years away for 40 years, right? It's had a number of false starts, and the hype train's rolling, and people are thinking, again, VR, are you sure? And you didn't really understand it until you experienced it. And that was another big challenge. Where are you going to experience the high quality VR? Well, at that time, it was like inside of Valve's, special room with all the markers around it. And so I probably brought 40 or 50 people through Valve, like getting them demos in that room to show them. And I never had a single person come out and then continue to be skeptical. They came out and said, okay, the tech's here, this is good enough. Now what, right? And then there's difference of opinion on how long the market's going to mature, how long it's going to take for headsets to get out there. But everybody believed that it's finally arrived from a technology point of view.
When you talk to Madrone, obviously you have great investors too, Madrone and Google Ventures or GV. Was there a tilting point for you, like tipping point? You talk to them, and then at some point, given the sort of the awareness in the market, did you feel the dynamics were changing? So second half of the year.
I can't pinpoint a specific time when that seemed to happen, but there definitely something clicked internally for Madrone, for example. And again, I think it's just it's a process for them when they go and educate themselves and try to build their own thesis for how they're going to invest in the space. Once they have that fully developed, I think that as a group, they just kind of, okay, now it's the time, let's go deploy some money. I'm assuming that's how it works inside. But I can't think of a specific time except when Matt reached out to me and said, okay, we're ready to invest in you. I'm like, and I've been talking to him for a year, right? So.
Jeff, you now have sizable VRAR portfolio. I think you're starting the second group soon.
We are. So, and we also hear from a lot of our portfolio companies, entrepreneurs that are trying to raise money in the market after our program. And we give them very specific advice, which is don't die. Stay alive, because
so staying alive
just
is
stay alive.
Very strategic.
Very strategic. That's why we get paid the big bucks, because we have all this great advice.
Can we have the song play in the background, please?
But why investors are nervous? Because there's no customers. We don't know what success looks like in VR yet. So we think the technology is phenomenal, and we have seen the aha moment, the switch be thrown for a lot of investors as they go from being skeptical to, well, we're pulling back on a lot of other sectors, but maybe VR is that greener pasture that we need to go chase. So we definitely believe that the education is occurring and people are getting excited, but there aren't customers yet. So I think that VCs are probably wise to be cautious. But that being said, our strategy, our philosophy is that now is the time to be building in VR, to be investing in VR. And when we look back, if we're 3 years out and we look back to today, there's going to be some really big wins that happen because people had the guts to do it today.
So
Can I throw in one controversial
ahead.
comment? So, gonna get there. But here's the thing: I would, as people that are potentially looking for funding, one of the things that I would highly encourage you guys to think about, because it is a real trade-off and a decision to make, is how much dilution do you take, and that's correlated to how much funding you can take in. And regardless of whether your company's ready to take $100,000, $500,000, or $5 million, the risk reward for an investor is still going to be calculated. What I would say is, if you have the option to take $500,000 in versus $750,000 in at the same kind of valuation, aka you're willing to take 50% more dilution, you might actually want to consider doing that, because the markets have changed, and that's not, that sounds self-serving and self-interested, but and while it is, to be clear, as an investor, it is actually the best advice I could give to anyone who's starting a company, because we don't know when VR is going to hit, and we don't know what the macroeconomics look like. Now, that might send a bunch of you away from coming and talking to me or other investors, but I think that would be the best advice I could give you as an entrepreneur is don't die, and you do that by having enough capital in reserves.
Bob, as you sort of went through the full process, if you look at the 2015 dynamics, there are about over 200 investors in VR AR. Out of that, about 65% or so were new investors, brand new investors, and again, doubled from 2014. And now, given that an incredible sort of platform shift and innovation on all fronts throughout the whole ecosystem, did you see more strategic investors, coming to market, Qualcomm's and others?
Yeah, we're starting to see this. Well, they're knocking on our door, and there's been a lot of chatter. I haven't been keeping my eye on who's investing in what, but definitely the dialogues have picked up heat.
And Jeff, given that, so how do you really advise? I mean, staying alive is a big, good theme, but how do you really prepare them for the follow-on stuff that they can go to, Bubba and Kobie and Aaron over here at Lightspeed? So what's
Sure.
the advice to sort of hit the key milestones and then ready for the next round of financing?
Yeah, so a lot of first-time entrepreneurs really are excited about their technology, about the product, and that gets sort of the friends and family money excited as well. But to go, and we are sort of included in that. So friends, family, fools, and Boost VC, I guess, because we go really early stage. But when you want to go up the ladder to these guys, you need to have some external validation. You need to have some market indicators that say, yes, that's working, and that product is succeeding in the marketplace, and it's a category leader. And so if you focus internally on validating your own assumptions and really loving your own product and your own technology, but you don't get it out in the marketplace and get it beat up and then make it better, it makes it hard for that growth curve to begin. So I would just caution that once you get a little bit of money, don't use it all to spit and polish and shine. Make sure that you're also hustling to get real business, make money, real revenues, and then as you grow, it'll be more attractive. I think, you'll have to ask
I
these
don't know.
guys.
Some of the things that excite me when I look for new deals. Well, one, I try to meet with as many sort of VR companies as possible because it's not until you see like a couple hundred demos can you really appreciate that one magical one that kind of comes across your way. So for me, I think it's probably even less sort of market traction, but one, sort of the quality of the entrepreneur, the passion they have around what they're building, and also is taking a fresh perspective to this unique medium. Like I hate sort of seeing folks that are coming from where it be sort of like pre-existing sort of formats and thinking out how that applies to how we're going to create this experience that surrounds you. No, you need sort of like creative, it's out there, totally nuts type thinking around what it would be to actually create what it would actually look like or feel like if you're a consumer and being in this new sort of environment. And it takes someone really sort of insane to come up with like those compelling, awesome experiences. And then sort of, for me, so it's very experience driven. And usually certain areas where I have a pre-existing thesis around would be a cool opportunity to build a very large platform under. And when I usually see that, I jump quick and sort of look to help build a company.
It's funny that you mentioned earn money, try to build a business, right? When I've been in the board meetings where I'm watching the CEO, talk about revenue, and he's really disappointed for the quarter, and we've got the VC saying, "Why are you worrying about revenue? Don't worry about revenue. It doesn't matter. Just go." And I think in certain industries that might make sense in some cases, but when you've got VR, which is like this emerging market, and nobody knows where we are on that curve. We all know it's going up and to the right, like extremely fast, but we don't know how much longer we've got on this part of it. I think survival is really important too. You got to make sure that whatever capital that you've just raised is going to not just last you that 1 year, but maybe it's going to last you 2 years or 3 years. Like get out there, get revenue. I think that's a pretty good message.
So Bob, since you
for
got
VR.
$5.5 million, what are your high level plans for that? In terms of
Take over the world.
Okay,
Yeah.
take over. Okay.
We might need a little more capital, but I think we got
But
it.
is the goal, say, it's enough for me for X many months and I'm going to achieve certain milestones and do a bigger round, or?
Yeah, I mean, that's still kind of up in the air. We've got a plan of record that is, we are kind of a platform play, and we do ultimately want to build a big, valuable business that has a meaningful impact on the world. But the route we get there are different paths. You can go we see opportunity here to generate significant revenues, and we can use that to leverage the core platform development. Or it's like, that's just a distraction. Let's focus on the core platform development, raise a bunch more money. Those are two very viable paths. And, we're kind of at the point where we've raised the first round. Now we have to decide which fork in the road do we choose.
Bubba, in terms of sort of breakdown of the investments, about 45% or so, content, video. Obviously, platform needs compelling content for adoption and growth. And on the other hand, content tends to be a tough investment topic. So, and we talked before, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, so it's hard to say this because I suspect some non-trivial percentage of folks in the audience are doing
How many
this.
in the content business? Wow, about
So
half.
I'm Kobie at Accel.com.
We love content.
No, so the reality is it's very hard as a venture investor to invest in a content company or a content creation studio, broadly speaking, whether that's gaming, whether that's straight content for production, entertainment value, or interactive content of any sort. And I'll tell you why, and it's a hard message here, but it's because oftentimes those businesses are not venture scale businesses. They can be tremendous businesses if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to own your own destiny, if you want to have to sweat, the highest, most important things to the company to who you're going to hire to come and build the desks that your employees are going to use. It can be a phenomenal business, but it is hard to make those return 10, 100, 500x invested capital within a time frame unless you hit a huge home run on the piece of content you build. And it is really a binary outcome. And so before you have that piece of content, while I agree with Kobie in saying, hey, you know what, if you're an incredibly special thinker that has shown a uniquely crazy but insightful view into what the new medium that is VR could look like, I'm willing to strongly consider taking a bet. But if that is around a game or an interactive experience that maybe is a one-time type experience and is hoping to build a franchise based on the character or the story, I just can't prove that a priori before I write the check. And so it's really hard to find venture investors. Now, folks like Jeff, and I'm sure other folks, perhaps Marco and TipTap, are willing to look at those kinds of plays with a smaller check at work to get that validation out there. But when you're looking to put $2, $5, $10 million to work without that proof point and knowing basically it's impossible to predict what humans at large will like, it's really hard to make that jump.
Yeah, like in a presidential debate, Jeff, they mention your name, so you're next.
Okay. So, my comment and Bubba's comment aside, it's hard for even us to do content because we expect a certain return as well. So I think for people in the audience that are needing capital for their business, it's really important to differentiate who you're going to get that capital from. Because I think you've heard pretty clearly here that if you're in this type of business, it's not a venture capital business. Doesn't mean it's not a great business. Some really smart, talented people have built great companies and had great lifestyles if they do that. And those are the type of companies that need to make revenue along the way. If you're a company that's really venture-backed and it's a go big or go home opportunity, yes, they don't want you to worry about some of the revenues on the margin. But for most of the people in this room and most of the people indeed in the world, your company's not a venture capital-backed business. It's a business where you earn money the regular way. And I think that VR has given a lot of people a new medium, just like the web did and mobile did. There was a lot of non-venture-backed companies that did very well, individuals that did very well because of the venture-backed companies that gave them the tools to do it. VR is going to have that as well. So just make sure you understand what type of company you're driving before you look at your capital needs.
I have a personal request. Tipitan and I, we love the content business. For all of you who are in content production, every time you have an exit, please email Bubba and tell him how well you did. And, it's
And let me buy you a beer to celebrate that, because it is awesome. And again, it's not taking away from how hard it is to do the business, but it is something. I know I'm really getting deep, but no, like it is really building on the point. Know who you're pitching and what their business model is. And if you don't know the business model of a venture firm, find me. I'm happy to walk you through it. Kobie's happy to walk you through it. There's hopefully a blog post, or maybe we should write one together on why it needs to have certain profile. He's like, I want nothing to do with you.
Hey, Kobie, I think part of it is probably the timing of the platform evolution. Because in the beginning, you have a sort of incredible need for the content, compelling content, accelerated. Later on, it may not be the right investment and sort of focus. And the point would be mobile gaming, right? Early on, a lot of investment in mobile gaming companies, and now it's we have 1.5 million apps and very mature market, and VCs have already moved on. So what about the timing of the investment regarding content?
Yeah, no, I think you kind of hit it. So like investing in mobile games early on with sort of smartphones is tough, and then we're in Supercell, not complaining about the return on that. So I think it's sort of, it all depends on timing, but at the end of the day, for these these platforms really to flourish, you still need content to help fuel them. So there's certain investors, I think, that early on are content investors and will be okay sort of supporting those businesses. And like Bubba and myself, like we're probably more focused on technology in terms of where we're focusing on deploying capital. And at some point, as the evolution of these sort of markets kind of mature over time, then you can actually see how you can basically extract economics from content machines with data around how consumers are actually sort of interacting with the content, and you may be able to be more sort of programmatic or technology driven in regards to how you're creating content. So I think it all depends on how the sort of the market has matured.
Do you know if you guys were in Supercell before or after Clash of Clans launched?
Before.
Oh, interesting.
So Bob, let's just move to sort of monetization, go-to-market, scaling business part. And I mean, every year we've been hearing this is the year, but I think this is the year, right? HTC is coming.
This one or
and,
next one for
yeah,
sure.
Right, this is it, right?
And if it's not those two, it's the one after.
Definitely.
So I think 2016 is the year, right? So, but given that you got funding, which is quite substantial, and congrats and all that, but how do you really sort of sequence the growth, and how do you sequence your focus and from HTC, Oculus, Sony, and then mobile?
So this is something I've given obviously a ton of thought to, because we're focused on kind of enterprise side of things. We're not really Sony's kind of not on our radar, so we have to kind of carve that out because it's less of an enterprise play. Although my video game company is doing a PlayStation VR launch title called Wayward Sky. You should check it out. It's very cool. Sorry, a little plug.
Shameless plug.
No, that's a really good question because most predictions have we're seeing somewhere between 2 and 4 million high quality headsets on the market by the end of this year when you combine them all together. Ballpark, right? And it could be off by 1 million or 2, but that's kind of like insignificant if you're looking at a big consumer play, right? 3 million devices versus 4 million devices is not very meaningful. We're waiting for when is it the iPhone explosion of VR, right? When do we hit that kind of volume? I don't think that's this year, obviously, just because we're restricted manufacturing wise. I think there's a lot of demand out there, but it's going to take probably a couple more years to see that level of growth. So for us, we think the kind of the natural progression right now to focus on our efforts on is in the enterprise. Specifically places where we can have a very meaningful impact on a business with only a few number of headsets, right? Strategically put those in places like on the manufacturing line or in an architectural engineer's like review room or something, right? Very strategic locations. We have a big impact on their business, save millions of dollars, and only need a few headsets, right? Then developers. Because where are all those first headsets going? They're going into the hands of developers and content creators and hardcore enthusiasts. And we focus on our efforts on them. And only down the road then do we start thinking about an end consumer because the volumes are actually meaningful.
Okay. Jeff, giving your sort of advice being staying alive and given the sort of platform dynamics, what's your general guidance in terms of where to start, how to transition, and how to grow?
Yeah. So. It's really difficult for companies right now because they don't have that consumer feedback. And I think that there are some examples where companies have an idea, they build the idea, they release it, and everybody loves it. Most of the time, a company has an idea, they build something, they get consumer feedback, they change it a little bit, not a pivot, but they change their approach so that consumers buy or like what they're doing. And I think that right now, what we're challenged with is that I don't think we've seen that aha moment yet. I don't think we've seen a technology or an experience that's really become addictive. I see 10 people on their phones right now on an iPhone. I've got a 13-year-old daughter. She likes VR, but she doesn't need it. She needs her phone. And we're not there yet by a long way in terms of what VR can do for people. So I think it's not just how fast they can ship hardware. It's how fast somebody comes up with an experience that people say, damn, that's it. That's why everybody's going to do it. So I haven't seen that yet.
Well, what's your sort of guidance when you talk to Emergent and others and saying, okay, you got to start here, monitor other platforms and eventually transition, or do you say tackle all, Bubba?
Oh, sorry. You said emergent.
I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry.
I have not.
Excel. That was
No, that's okay.
question to you and wrong company. Yeah. My apologies.
No
There
worries,
you
no
go.
worries. I probably have a little bit of a contrarian view here. And I actually think for desktop HMDs, this is definitely 2007, right? So this is like the iPhone came out, didn't have Exchange email, wasn't, kind of ready for, $600. The business model wasn't quite figured out. I don't even think Apple, if they wanted to, could have sold more than 1 million of them because they were also supply constrained, and no one really kind of makes a point of that. I think that's Oculus and Rift, Oculus and Vive today, and this year, and maybe we get 2, maybe we get 5, I don't know. But I do think the thing that's going to hit this year is the number one stocking stuffer is going to be a cardboard viewer of some form, whether it's cardboard or whether it's the ViewMaster, which is an incredible viewer. I mean, especially with light blocking and what they've done, and then when you throw in the AR stuff. And so the question is, if every kid has one of those in their stocking, you got to get some great content for them. And you work backwards and you say, hey, every business is going to want to differentiate and start to distribute cardboard viewers to get branding out there. It's going to become the USB drive of this year, right? Remember how many thumb drives does everyone have stuck in a drawer that has some random corporate logo on it? We gave out at our LP meeting this last year, every LP got a cardboard viewer that said DFJ on it. And so, I think there's actually going to be a ton going on of consumer experiences. They're not going to be long lasting. And so as a result, I actually, when I talk to companies, I'm very interested in understanding how much are you going to be able to do on mobile? Are people going to be able to consume? Are they going to be able to interact using a cardboard viewer? And it's extraordinarily hard to do, right? With potentially zero input, no positional tracking, all these things that we think need to exist for VR to be VR. Well, remember, we're way down the rabbit hole. We've fully digested a red pill, and what we think is an okay experience is actually mind-blowing to most people. And even just a little taste of something is great. But what is missing is, what is that game that a kid can't put down, or even I can't put down when I need 5-minute break from something? And until that, and I'm hoping, and I expect someone to create that in the next 6 months. And that to fuel really the on-road to next year being when we really see kind of mainstream desktop HMD adoption, but this year is the year of cardboard.
Yeah, I'm probably more actually focused long-term on mobile, where I'm deploying capital. The desktop experience is amazing. I think Sony actually will probably do better than most people expect with sort of the Morpheus, depending on price point. But with so many PS4s in people's homes, I think that's actually a viable platform. But I think for me, long term, the sort of untethered mobile experience, total cost of ownership is so low, and maybe it's not 2017, maybe 2018, but you're going to have positional tracking and sort of gesture recognition incorporated with sort of next generation sensors. And I look at this as very much a long-term game. So portfolio companies that I bring on, or I'm trying to bring in, trying to really sort of understand what is their long-term sort of mobile strategy, because it only takes until Samsung and others sort of just bundle in a headset and you have a Gear VR type experience for everyone, that suddenly goes from just a few million sort of VR kits to hundreds of millions, and that could happen overnight. Whether that will happen, who knows? But that's something that I'm planning for.
So I completely agree with Kobie here. I think this is the year, and it's better than, I think it's a year that's better than cardboard. It's the year of portable VR. Which is, people say mobile VR because it uses a mobile phone, but I'm not walking around in it, walking into walls and stuff. It's more like it's a portable VR solution. And once it has positional tracking, which we're going to get this year, that's a game changer, because right now Gear VR is without positional tracking. It's not true VR. There's no immersion if you don't have positional tracking, and it makes a lot more people uncomfortable and ill than when you do have positional tracking. So it's going to kind of take it from it's good enough for 60% of the people to like 90% of the people. It's going to be a comfortable, really good experience, and I think we're going to see some killer content by the end of the year.
So, Kobie, going back to
actually,
emergent,
the positional
hold it,
track-
Bubba.
oh.
Just
And it's going to be priced well.
go ahead. All right. So going back to emergent, say the message is VR for everyone, consumer play. So how important is it not only for them but for you, looking at players like Homidos and Specs and Figments, coming up with these very portable devices, part of your mobile device is I don't know if you guys have seen Figment or Spec. They are phone cases. You push a button, it becomes a VR device.
Oh, so what, like
So the question is, are you planning to invest in those accelerators? Maybe, for you too, Bubba, because those are crucial to the growth of the portable VR.
Oh, in terms of like those kind of headsets?
Yep.
Probably not. For me, honestly, it's like, it feels a little bit, too like the Wild Wild West. There's so many sort of just headsets out there that could be sort of, agnostic and take whatever sort of, smartphone and sort of create a, VR experience. For me, the Gear VRs, I think it's a very amazing product, and there might be another product that hits it that's independent as well. But to invest in that, I think it's just too risky.
Okay. Bubba, sorry, I cut you off.
Oh no, I agree on the. It's too hard to do effectively I think a low margin piece of plastic or cardboard at scale that's going to kind of not look like a venture scale business. I think the positional tracking I think that's us being too far down the rabbit hole. I think like you look at the article of the surgeon who used Google Cardboard to practice a surgery before he worked on a baby and saved the baby's life. That didn't require positional. I mean, that is like, those stories are going to get people to try VR, and then we're waiting for that content mashup. So I think whether it's this year or next year, we're all kind of shooting at the dark, but I think the overarching thing is push yourselves to think about what the experience could be like. Not with what your expectations are, but maybe what people who have never experienced VR before. And I think that's really gonna change maybe the addressable market you can build with your product, or you can touch with your product.
Did you have a comment? Jeff, sort of like closing comments in terms of sort of when you look at the sort of landscape, obviously this is the year, and what are your sort of recommendations to an entrepreneur raising some modest amount of money and stay alive, focus on execution, and what do you do for follow-on financing? I think sometimes challenge is not the current financing, but what do you do beyond that?
Yeah. What do I do, or what do the entrepreneurs do?
What's your recommendation? How do you really prepare them? Because
Yeah,
a lot of companies you deal with, like 2 to 5 person companies.
Yeah. It's tough. If you build a business that requires additional financing in a specific amount of time, you're really setting yourself up for a lot of pressure. And I think that the number one thing that you need to do, if you raise money from an external party, whether that's a VC or just somebody else that has money to invest in you, you need to know specifically what you're going to accomplish with that money. And if you hit that goal, then your chance of raising more money is greatly improved. So, we make sure that our teams, before they raise that first money, really have some knowledge of what their plan is, how they're going to execute their plan, who their team is, what benchmarks they're going to have, milestones that they want to accomplish, so that if and when they need to raise additional capital, there's a track record of success. And that's measured in lots of different ways. But know what it is for your company. Know what success is for your company. Understand it and measure it over time.
Yeah, I think I definitely think the one thing that is understood, and actually Bob touched on it with his experiences, certainly when there's not a proof point, external proof point, you can build a case of here's what I said I was going to do, here's what I did, if you have hopefully helpful investors that are giving you the best advice they can, they'll be critical and honest around what your milestones should be and help you reach those with strategic hiring or whatnot. But there is a huge component, especially at this stage of a market, and often at the stage of companies that we're seeing, where it is about the person and the people and that relationship. And so, I do think the other thing I would encourage is don't just think of, you got some amount of money, whether that's small or big, 500K or 5 million, that you're done fundraising forever if you know you can't be profitable on that amount of money. Go invest some percentage of time, especially if it doesn't have to be the CEO, it can be the COO, it can be the CFO, but make it someone who is a real core to the company, is a founder of the company, and invest that time, because it is, no one knows the timing, but we do get to develop a perspective on the character and the thought process, and really ultimately if we want to be in business with someone over a longer period of time, and you could get a deal frenzy if you hit the right milestones, or you're the number one app that every Oculus user is using. Sure, those things could happen, but don't plan on those happening, and plan rather on being really realistic, open, honest, and authentic with potential people you want to be in business with. Would probably be the other way to approach the challenge of taking on the burden of external capital.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think also just you have to be agile in this market, because lots of things are going to be changing constantly, and you have to always sort of be rethinking how you're approaching the category and different sort of decisions you need to make with regards to platforms you're supporting, and you're only going to have so much bandwidth, so you have to be sort of really focused and know when you should zig one direction or zag the other.
I would say don't underestimate the amount of time it takes to get your first deal done. You need to start, cultivating and building relationships now. Get yourself in front of, get introduced to the various local angels or early stage funds. And when you go out and you raise that first round, make sure that you can accomplish all your goals with half that money, or whatever. You basically, you want to be going into your next round not hitting a cash wall, right? You want to at least have some money in the bank so you're not like negotiating with nothing. You want to be able to stay in business for however long it takes you to raise that next round. And I see that a lot.
Actually, I'd say also be careful at certain meetings you take, because some people may have ulterior motives and be tire kickers or be definitely fishing for data. So whoever you meet with, just make sure you can trust them, and especially potentially different technology strategics. You definitely don't want to just open up the full Komodo and show them all your plans and tech, because you never know what they really mean. So if that's something that does happen, just be careful.
We have about 10 minutes or so we'll open up to questions. Go ahead. You have to scream a little bit.
Sorry, you mentioned mobile positional tracking, and you said you see solutions coming. So for you, what solutions do you see coming, and for everybody else, do you see any opportunity in investing in that area?
I can't say what I've seen or heard because I'm under NDA. And what's that?
Well, at CES, you had Ion and Intel had a phone, the RealSense phone, Tango phone, and Ion, which you tried it out, and it was, it was kind of crude, but at least demonstrated the technology.
And if you look at, you combo Tango, you combo the Nexus device, and you combo, a rubber band, you probably have something. Yeah. It's pretty interesting.
Go ahead.
How do you address valuation with early stagers?
Who's the question for?
Jeff, you
Not it.
You pluck it. You pluck it out of thin air.
As far as I can tell.
It's very difficult. There's really no formula. Each deal can be different. We tend to have a fairly narrow range of where we invest and what percentage of equity that we take, and I think that really it's just a process of negotiation, and there are different factors: your technology, your team, your experience, your market. All those things can be used in your favor. Competition for the investment can be used in your favor. But really, at the end of the day, that conversation between you and your investor is just what makes both parties feel good, what makes both parties say, yeah, that's a fair deal for both of us, let's move forward, and there's no formula to get there.
Any other comments?
I'd say it's about right. I mean, it's a lot of times for really interesting deals, it's market driven. There's definitely been scenarios, I'm sure you guys have seen it, where entrepreneur goes out and sets an expectation around valuation and totally just taints the market, and then comes back with their tail between their legs and starts trying to get a deal done. So you gotta be careful.
Yeah, and actually that's a great point, which is figure out what you need, and then also think about it from what you're going to need down the road, and the deal that you're putting, whatever deal you think is a good deal for you. Also think about the next lens, which is, okay, after I get this investor on board, we're going to be on the same side of the table trying to get a deal, in 12 to 18 months, assuming you're not trying to get cash flow positive after that round. And so they're also going to be bringing that to filter. And so while markets can drive irrational forward pricing, and you can optimize for that, you can also optimize for, hey, if I know I'm going to be, effectively addicted to OPM, other people's money for a while, like plan on it.
Yeah, the other big impedance mismatch I see between entrepreneurs and early stage folks is the entrepreneur they're placing value on the wrong things. They think their valuation's worth this much because their idea is so great. And that's not really what they're investing in. It's not so much the idea in itself. The idea in itself basically has zero value. Is that idea in the right place? Is it at the right time? Is it the right time in the market? Who are the VC? They're really betting on you, right? They're betting on the jockey, not so much the horse, right? A good entrepreneur is going to be able to kind of, navigate this emerging market and swim different ways. So don't think just because you've got a good idea that you're worth $10 million right out of the gate.
Yeah, my advice on valuation is that It's really, cliche is sort of more of an art than a science, and given a market dynamics that, market dynamics we're seeing right now, a lot of strategics are coming in the market, a lot of overseas investors coming in the market. Don't go to nose bleeding valuations, you'll pay for it in the next round,
yeah.
because you have to execute flawlessly. And frankly, 9 out of 10, top line is always missed, and your 9 out of 10, your schedule is more aggressive than realistic. So if you push the valuation so high, and you will pay for it for the next round. And our advice would be, make it balanced between you and the investors, because you'll come back to them. This is a long-term partnership. It's not really sort of minimize dilution at any price versus get a balanced ownership structure so that you can come back to them, even good times and bad times, continue to fund the company. So, question there.
So back in college, there were a lot of rainy days where I didn't feel like going to class, and had I had a headset and been able to just check into class, I probably would have attended more classes. So my question is if anybody on stage has money in the education space in terms of VR, and how bullish you are on the education space for virtual reality.
Yes, that's one of our core areas is education. We think that not industry sector, whatever you want to call it, is really going to be disrupted by VR because it's fundamentally a new way to learn. So I don't know when that's going to hit. I think it will probably begin to take shape outside of the school systems first, and then those schools, because that's a long sales process. But people are going to learn that they can learn well in VR, and then it will matriculate into the school system. So long term, phenomenal industry, phenomenal opportunities in education in VR.
All the way in the back.
Yeah, I think that probably got most of us in this room. The VR is actually fine on a VR goggle headset. Do you find that when you go to VCs, if they don't understand it, just actually have them wear it and try it, and they're like, oh wow, I totally get this, here's some money. Does that happen? Or would it happen?
Well, have you seen it?
I think there is, you can quickly tell, and Bob probably has even better stories than I can share, calibrated and uncalibrated VCs, and you can quickly find that out, right? And a calibrated VC has probably done as many headsets as they can, but at the very minimum, the Valve Vive. Just because I think that there's a pre-Vive and a post-Vive kind of belief in VR, and then after you figure out if the individual VC you're talking to is kind of pre-Vive or post-Vive, you then need to figure out if their partnership is pre-Vive or post-Vive. I took my whole partnership up to C-Vive, and actually Bob helped put that together for us, and that completely changed the tenor of the conversations with anyone that was coming in to talk about VR for us. So I suspect, I don't know what your experience has been with your partners, but
I took them all over to Oculus and sort of had them try everything. So I think,
yeah, CB1 is probably...
Yeah, so I think sort of the issue is like, if you're amongst a partnership and you're trying to push a VR deal and they have no idea what really VR is, it's kind of like, can't be the lone soldier in a partnership type dynamic.
So ask that question. Have your partners done X?
Yeah.
After you've confirmed that the partner you're talking to has done.
But Bob, you were talking about doing a lot of education in the beginning.
Yeah.
So that's probably what he was referring to, because a lot of people want to learn.
Yeah,
and you have to optimize your
but I was doing that 2 years ago. I think at this point, there's enough firms out there that have that kind of experience that it's a good climate right now. But I still totally recommend ask the question: what have you experienced, the individual that you're talking to, and what have your partners experienced? It's a good filter.
How important is the role of a CFO in a startup, or having somebody in charge of the accounting and financials? What is your advice?
I would say early on, not very important at all. I mean, you want to keep your eye on your cash, but a part-time CFO that's coming in like maybe once a week for a couple of hours to do basic, bookkeeping and making sure that you have a budget. You do want somebody to help you create a budget so you can track, budget to actual over time, but obviously not a full-time CFO.
Okay, one more question, or we're done? We're done. So I want to first of all have two thanks. One is to Cosmo and the team. This is an awesome event, really huge, massive success. Second one is to this amazing panel, really, for sharing your insights and perspectives. Really helpful. Thank you very much. Yeah.